Okay, 11:01. So here we go. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all to the program, and I'd also like to thank you very much for spending a little shy of 2 hours with me on this holiday weekend. I really do appreciate it, but I can pretty much promise that you'll get some information which will make this whole process as easy and productive as it can possibly be. We will probably get done about 12:45 to 12:50, somewhere around in there, give or take a few minutes. Okay. Um, so let me tell you a little bit about my background, just so you know where all my numerous stories come from. And man, are there a lot of them. I actually started doing this in 1981. I have not been doing this straight since 1981. I have been doing it straight nonstop since 1995. And then I worked for other companies for 9 years, which was probably one of my bigger mistakes, working for other people. And then back in 2004, 21 years ago, I started this business. It used to be in Fremont. It's now in Lake City. And what I did basically is the other places I worked at, especially the place I spent the most time at, it was kind of like a master class in how not to run a business. And so I said, if I ever do break off and do this on my own, I will do everything about 180 degrees opposite than I've been doing it these other places or the way these other places are run. And I thought, I bet it'll be successful. And fortunately, I was right because it has turned out to be pretty successful. Um, did this job for 3 years in New York City. I've lived on and off in New York a few times, one of which I always had two jobs in New York, driving instruction and another job. So one of the jobs was high school principal in the South Bronx at Public School 147, officially the most violent, dangerous high school in the United States. People asked me what that was like, and that was actually a pretty interesting experience. I also, for a while, for 2.5 years, I had the also interesting, frustrating, ridiculously, comically bad run business called the Trump Shuttle, which was when Donald Trump attempted to own an airline, which was a comedy of errors if there ever was such a thing. Okay. But I won't get into that too much right now. But if anybody wants to ask me about it, I'll be happy to tell you. Then I also gave lessons at a mental hospital. I worked at this place. This is back in the 90s, where 2 days a week I would have to go down to what used to be called the West Seattle Psychiatric Hospital and give driving lessons to mental patients as part of a state program. And I got to tell you, you have not lived until you've done that. And while it definitely was not fun at the time, it does tend to generate a lot of very interesting stories. Okay, that's actually kind of an out of date figure. I should change these slides. The problem with these slides is that I only I only think about them when I'm actually doing them, and I think, yeah, I'm gonna go back and change that. Then, I show them again, and whoops, why didn't I do that? It's probably more like 90,000, and that's no BS. That's true. Okay, and at least 5,000 drive tests. I already mentioned that, and during this whole time, never had anybody hit anything. So anybody can say anything they want about me that they want to, and they do, but nobody cannot say I'm very good at staying out of wrecks. I mean, you look at my instruction cars and they're completely pristine. And I've been with some of the worst drivers you could ever imagine. By the way, let me interject a point here. If you have any additional questions or concerns, at the end of the program, I'll be happy to stick around for as long as you need me to and answer any of those questions. So you might just want to notate those, although I've been doing this long that pretty much every question that you may have, I will probably answer during this Zoom session. However, if you do have any additional ones, I'll be happy to address those at the end. I also wrote that book. You can't really tell how big that is. That's 8.5 by 11, and I believe it's 938 pages. And that's probably the most detailed analysis ever written of why inexperienced drivers get in more wrecks than experienced drivers. And I will tell you, if you don't remember anything else, remember this. If a publisher ever comes to you and asks you if you want to write a book about the specialty, whatever it is you do, I would highly advise you to turn 180 degrees in the opposite direction and run as fast as you possibly can, and don't stop until you collapse, because that's what happened to me. I figured I can knock this sucker out in 6 months. Well, 4 years later, and countless thousands of hours later, that's how long it took me to finish. And from a money standpoint, it was definitely not worth it. So, but it does show that I know what I'm talking about anyway. At the end, we will have a dark topic. And in case you're wondering what that dark topic, will I tell you now? No, you're going to have to wait. I'll keep you in suspense. It's going to keep you interested. And by the way, when I do these things, I got to like constantly drink iced tea to keep my voice going, which is what I'm doing now. Oh God, I spilled some. Still didn't spill it on one of the laptops. But so when you feel me back away a bit and do that, that's what I'm doing, just in case you're wondering, because it does sound kind of weird every once in a while. Anyway, I will cover that at the end. Like I said, it'll be something to look forward to. Okay, now when I used to do these Zoom sessions live back in the Fremont days, which hasn't happened for like over 5 years. Thank God those days are over. But I also did the orientation live, and I used to have handouts. Remember those handouts? Well, that handout, or the main points of it, are at that web page. So you might want to notate that or take a picture of it. And because that will kind of highlight some of the things I'm going to say. So if you ever want to go back to that, you can, and it might answer your question. On Tuesday or Wednesday, one or the other, probably Tuesday, you're going to receive an agreement, a parent/student agreement. These are required by the Department of Licensing. There is absolutely nothing ominous in there. And I'll send those to you. Those need to be sent back to me without fail, okay? Because I have to turn these in to the auditors at the Department of Licensing, okay? And when I don't, I have to come up with some very good explanations why they weren't done. So please get those in. And it's not really a DocuSign. It's done through Jot form, which is kind of a low rent, poor man's DocuSign, but it's the same kind of thing. You just scribble something that looks like a signature, hit send, and that's about all there is to it. So it's real simple. Okay, communication with me, email is the best. I'm sure you all have my email, but there it is again. And this is important. You know how it's important? Because the slide says it's important, and the slides never lie, or do they? Yeah, they do. But this one isn't. This is important. Whenever you communicate with me about anything, please put the student's first and last actual name there, because as often as not, the parent's last name is different than the student. And sometimes I have no idea who the question is even about. All right. So no nicknames, first and last actual name. It is not uncommon between the lessons and the testing for me to deal with over 100 people every week. And the amount of emails and texts I have to deal with is absolutely insane. And so if I know who it is that you're talking about, I can answer your question faster and more accurately than if I have to try to figure it out. Okay, so again, please, first and last actual name. Withdrawals. Why would anybody withdraw? Well, I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, but students can withdraw by Monday, 9/8 by 11 a.m. And if they do, I will send the parent back the $300 they've already paid. And by the way, if you have not already paid the initial $300, please do so. I would appreciate it. So why would anybody withdraw? Do people ever withdraw? On average, one a year. Yeah, because I will tell you something. I have built this business a lot off of my personality. Okay. And I have an interesting personality, which is, how should we describe it? It is edgy. It is flippant. It is sometimes downright controversial. Okay. And when you signed up, I forget my exact verbiage. I said unapologetic New York attitude, which is kind of what I've got. All right. And most people find it rather amusing and unique. Okay. And so I don't really find any reason to change it because it's worked out really well. Uh, but there are occasionally some that want something entirely different than what I'm offering. Okay. And if you are hoping for a very strictly by the book program, this is not it. Okay. This is a real world, non-textbook type of a thing. It's not theoretical and it's taught from decades and tens of thousands of lessons doing it. Okay. Um, yeah. Also, especially during the Zooms, I know I'm competing because I'm realistic. You know, there are some driver's ed teachers or some people in any realm who are doing Zoom sessions and they probably think that everybody is hanging on their every word. I know that that is nowhere near the case. All right. Because, I mean, let's face it, the students got the laptop up, uh, and they got their phone in their hand, and that's what they got on the phone. And I got to try to compete with that and that and that and that. And during the fall, I got to compete with that. And that is not easy to compete with. All right. Because I know that they're a hell of a lot more interested in those other things on the right side of the screen than on the left side of the screen. So therefore, that's one reason I just kind of tend to be kind of animated. And quite frankly, if I did this the way that theoretically I was supposed to do it, the only question would be who would fall asleep first, me or the students? Probably me. Okay. And here's one of those little experiential things I'll tell you about. One of the places I used to work for, it was over in Redmond, and the guy, I mean, I did wonders for the guy's business because I brought a lot of students into the program. But the guy that ran the place just hated the way I did it. And so I said, well, damn, Jim, why don't you just fire me then? And he'd come up with some excuse. And the reason he didn't is because I made so much damn money for the guy. Okay. And so he would sit behind me when I was doing the class, and he would insist I do it a certain way. And the class used to go from it started at 7 p.m. I remember one night I get like 15 minutes into it. I'm just basically reading out of a textbook, and I was so bored. My legs literally gave out. I literally collapsed flat on the floor. It was like I had, it was like narcolepsy. And I mean, everybody thought I was like, I died or something. Well, I almost did of boredom. So I mean, no, I mean, I don't. I mean, and I'm also going to tell you this just to avoid any misunderstandings. All right. You know, you will sometimes be looking over your kid's shoulder at what they're watching and what I'm doing, and you're going to go, what does that have to do with driving? That's terrible. Well, a lot of the stuff I talk about isn't about driving, it's about other things. I mean, trying to fill up these whole Zoom sessions with what to do at a stop sign, that is not an easy task. All right. I will also tell you this, and well, I'll tell you about it when I get to the next slide. All right. Oh, well, maybe it's not the next slide, but it still is relevant. When you try to please everybody, you usually end up pleasing nobody. So I would rather be myself and kind of appeal to my core group of customers who are extremely loyal, all right, than try to like be completely vanilla and in which case nobody's going to like it, all right? Now, there's two parts to this. There are the Zoom session and there are the drives. And I will tell you, they are totally, completely, 100% not related to each other. So when you email me or text me, although I do prefer email, Please, if you have a question about one or the other, please specify which one you're talking about. Because when people get them mixed up, I can easily give out inaccurate information. Oh boy, gonna go through a lot of iced tea this morning, I'll tell you. Soon to be afternoon. Now, here's another point I want to make. Uh, I'm just going to tell you that the Zoom sessions, I do not take these seriously whatsoever. Why don't I take them seriously? Because the fact of the matter is, people do not get good at driving by watching videos, by reading books, by doing worksheets, or even listening to me. Not too much anyway. You get good at it by actually doing it. It is not a left brain analytical academic type of exercise. It is a right brain spatial relations, eye hand coordination activity. Okay. That's how you get good at it. There, now I've taught other subjects. Uh, I used to be a flight instructor, and as my job at flight instructor, I taught how to people how to fly in the plane. I also taught what used to be called ground school. And ground school, when people are learning to fly, is very relevant because flying an airplane, anybody that tells you different doesn't know what they're talking about. Flying an airplane is one hell of a lot more complicated than driving a car. All right. So, I'm required to do the Zoom sessions. So I do them, but I make the whole thing as painless as possible. Okay. And, I do try to make it give usable information. I tell people, how to buy insurance and what type of insurance not to buy, what to do when you get in a wreck and what not to do. Um, Defensive driving, some things to look for with other drivers that are indicators of when they're going to mess up, what to do when you get pulled over by the police, how to buy a vehicle, how to get it fixed, things like that. So I keep it as practical as I possibly can. Okay. All right. Now, the Zooms, they can come. Most of you know this, but I'm going to say it anyway because I still get, questions about this. They go Saturday at 10 or Sunday at 4:15. Now, you notice I'll say sometimes 4:30. On Sunday, I'm out giving drives, and kind of depending what the schedule is looking like that day, sometimes trying to get back here, and I'm broadcasting this from Northeast Seattle from a neighborhood called Hawthorne Hills where I live. But trying to get back here can be a challenge. Okay. So sometimes, but everybody will know that in advance. Okay. Sometimes it's going to be 4:30 because some of the students live quite a ways away. Okay. All right. Starts next weekend. It goes every weekend through the weekend, December 13th. And I put there, yes, it goes even on Thanksgiving weekend. Okay. Now, missing, maybe that's on another slide. I don't know. Let's see here. Maybe it is. Okay. Let me put this in here now. Although it may come up later. Uh, if they have to miss some Zoom sessions, that's okay. Now, here's the thing. Officially, and this is in that agreement, they can only miss 3 that have to be made up. And once they miss more than that, I'm supposed to expel them. Do I do that? I'm going to talk about it in a minute here. This does require a degree of commitment. All right. And it does require part of that commitment is doing this stuff and maybe not doing other things they'd rather be doing. But I'm a hell of a lot more loose and flexible on this than anybody else is in this business. Okay. You can be assured about that. But I have to still put some kind of a floor down for what I can let people do. All right. But missing a few is not a problem. Here's a critical point. This is regulated by the Washington State Department of Licensing. Now, here's why I mention this, because I know that a lot of you pay a lot of money for those sports camps and those travel teams. and those student trips to Europe and everything. All that stuff I never got to do. The class warfare thing going here. But the fact of the matter is, no matter how much you pay for that stuff, it is not regulated by a state agency, and this very definitely is. I have to show that the students are participating at least a minimal level, or bad stuff starts happening. This does require, and I'm just going to be flat honest with you, this requires a level of commitment that a lot of people don't want to give it. And then we start running into problems, okay? All right, so
And the main problem we run into is
not so much the Zoom sessions, it's those
It's almost
drives.
always 8 in the morning.
Keep in mind that I can only do
80%
one drive at a
asleep.
time, okay? And
So
that they want to see the
rescheduling
records
people
of this,
is not always
and this
sometimes
student,
very
and I've got to
difficult.
get
Sometimes
that,
it's not
and the
possible
deadline
at
is like
all.
3 p.m. and I better
And you
find a
all
way
have
to
the
do it.
drive
All right?
schedule, and
Some
so,
of you I
again,
made changes to
it
it.
requires a level
Okay?
of
But
participation.
that's
and
pretty
sticking
much
with it.
going to be
Although,
it.
again,
I will,
I'm a
and
lot
I'm
more
not saying I
accommodating
can't
than
change
any
the
other
schedule at all,
programmers. Be
but
assured of that.
there is a limit to what I can do. So this does mean possibly not doing other things the students would rather be doing. Okay, so here we've got this guy, and look what he got invited to do. God, is that a nice plane? That's called a Dassault Falcon. I believe that's the only tri-jet still made in the world. Okay, but wow, nice. Anyway, so but since they can't get a license if they're under 18 at this point, until they get through this program or some other program, of which there are many, let's just kind of put the nose to the grindstone and get through it. Okay. And here's another thing, because this happens 1 or 2 times in every class. I'll get contacted by a parent that wants to put the drives off till later. And the answer is just going to be no. Okay. The drives must be completed during the program. I'm not going to extend them into the next program. Okay. And I won't get into all the reasons why, but there are several reasons why that becomes a problem. So I'm going to tell you right now, okay, if it's going to be a problem, sticking with this program to the extent that your kid is going to have to stick with it, we should probably part company right now. I'm also going to tell you this. If you were to drop out of my program and go somewhere else, this would be even more of an issue. It could become even more of a problem. All right. Because there's a few other driving schools trying to schedule drives is a nightmare, minimal a nightmare. Okay. And they're very non-understanding. And I usually, I have a very customer focused attitude more than they do. So there's just no getting around it, folks. They may have to be an hour late to that birthday party. They may have to duck out for an hour of grandma's birthday party. Okay. But then they can come back. All right. It'll still be going on, I'm sure. So yeah, maybe it's going to require one less weekend vacation for you. All right. But there's just no getting around it. It's got to be done. So let's just get through it. Okay. Okay. There's 3 parties responsible for making this whole thing work. And what do I mean when I say make it work? Well, I mean that they get their licenses when they want to, whenever that may be. They come into my office in Lake City and they pass the knowledge and drive tests. And then they go out there and drive and don't get in too much trouble. Notice I didn't say they're not going to get in any trouble, because they probably will, but let's just hope it's relatively minor anyway. And those 3 parties are in this order of priority. On top is the students. It's mainly their responsibility. It's their responsibility to make it to the Zoom sessions and stick through them all the way through, despite the fact that they would rather be doing something else. It's their responsibility to get themselves out there at the curb, so when we show up in the car, they are right there. Okay. It's their responsibility to bug you to practice driving with them, which they're probably going to have to do. Much more about that later. Okay. So it's mainly their responsibility. Number two is the parents. It's up to you to do your part. And down at the bottom is me. Now, I will do my part, absolutely, definitely, but you got to do yours and they have to do theirs. Let's think of this like a three-legged stool. They don't make three-legged stools anymore, but there was a time when they did, because I know, because I'm looking at one right now. It's actually much more stable than it looks, by the way. And it's held up. It works because it's held up by three components. Now, comparing it to what I was just referring to, we've got the student, we've got you, and we've got me. And if everybody does what they're supposed to, we usually, not always, but we usually get success. And what is success, in case you didn't know? Well, I will tell you, success is sweet. All right. Now, let's think of another entity that you're all familiar with in this city that is held up by three components. Okay. And since 1961, it has withheld earthquakes and near hurricane force winds, yet it stays upright. That's what I'm talking about there. Because it's held up by three components. Well, if we remove one of the components, what do you think is going to happen? Well, let's have a little preemptive forensic experiment in structural engineering here. Uh-oh. This is not good for those people up there, I will tell you, or anybody on the ground, you know. Ah, bad. I think we can all agree that's bad. Yeah. Yep, Kim, you should have. You definitely should have gone to Taco Bell. Oh, now his head is spinning. He's so pissed. Who cares? Oh, look, but his buddy is there. Hmm. Boy, that guy ain't looking too good these days, is he? All right. Or even then, he wasn't looking too good. Okay, so here's another frequent misconception. Okay. Look at these people. God, they look happy. Now, they're obviously on a cruise ship. I mean, they're obviously not on the Goodyear blimp, you know. And let's say that they are in one of like, they bought the big package and what is it on? MSC cruises. I think they call it the yacht club, a ship within a ship where you pay like four or five times as much and it's like everything is deluxe, or it should be. Well, here's the mindset. Okay. Where's the mindset? Yeah. For all that money, they can just sit back, relax, turn their brain off, and let everybody else worry about everything else and let the world go by. And the guy's absolutely right. For what they paid, they should be able to do that. Okay. But don't confuse that with driver's ed. All right. Because driver's ed is really not like that. It's not like that with me. It's not like that with anybody. Okay. That's closer to reality. Now that I know it's an exaggeration. It's not as bad as doing push-ups, but especially on a dirty floor, but it requires effort. It requires more effort from some people than others, I will tell you, but it does require effort. All right. There again, I'll do my part. I'll make it as pleasant, as tolerable as I can humanly make it. And I'll make it more those things more than anybody else does. That's one reason my business is more successful than others, okay? Because I just put more effort into this. I think I provide a better product, a more desirable product. But it is not like, going on a cruise where you can just turn your brains off, or they can, okay? Class makeups, I already kind of covered this. Now, a few days after the program ends in December, the students will receive a list of the specific session numbers they need to make up. And then there will be a link to when those are in the future. And then they can refer to those and come then. And it's the same format as this program, either Saturday or Sunday. Keep in mind that students cannot get a license until number one, they're 16, and number two, they have held their permits for 6 months. So even if they have to wait till the end of that next session, which I believe the last day is May 3rd or something like that, give or take a day. It usually they usually couldn't get their licenses till then anyway. Okay. But if it's going to be a problem, let's say they miss session 6 or something, and they look at session 6 and they totally are not going to be available that weekend. Have them talk to me about that because there is a workaround I can do. Like I said, I'll do everything I can to make this as absolutely easy and convenient as possible for everybody. All right, more so than anybody else does. Okay, I am ridiculously easy to get along with. Maybe sometimes a little bit too much for my own good, to be honest with you, because I get taken advantage of by some people or they try to take advantage of me. But there's some stuff which is absolutely not allowed. One is disappearing from the program. Um, you know, they can miss some Zoom sessions, but I do not want to look at that Zoom database and see that they're not there for 5 weeks in a row. Okay. That no bueno. All right. That's not acceptable. Okay. Now, in the car, I'm very conversational. Unfortunately, most students don't talk to me. It's usually like this awkward dead silence with me just saying turn right or turn left. But um, in the car, uh, they make mistakes. They make a lot of mistakes. That's not a problem. I'm very calm and measured and businesslike about everything. There's nothing that's really going to shock me after all I've been through. But I don't put up with any abuse or personal insults. Back when I worked for other people, I was like a punching bag for people. It was like just, you know, people would get in the car and just do nothing but insult me, for everything they could. They would insult every little imperfection I've got. They would like insult and ridicule my personal appearance. I'm going to tell you that shit don't fly anymore. Okay. I own this company. I answer to nobody. Okay. And anybody that starts challenging me in the car about driving when I give them a correction or, attacking me personally is going to find out very quickly that's a bad idea, an extremely bad idea. And just 2 weeks ago, a guy in the summer program found that out the hard way. Okay. So now in the car, if people want to discuss anything with me, they are very welcome to it. We don't have to agree on stuff. As a matter of fact, I absolutely love getting into political discussions and debates. And why do I like it? Because I'm very good at it. Okay. There's many things in this world I'm terrible at, but debating politics, I am extremely good at it and I'm very interested in it. Okay, that's not a problem, but uh, you know, I have to keep somebody from flying through the red light. Okay, I use the brakes. Okay. And they say, light's red, stop at it. How can you debate that? And some people they want to start arguing with me about it, and I just trust me, they'll do that once and that's it. There won't be a second time. Chronic lateness. This has to do with either in the car or the Zooms. Now, look, uh, I live in the real world just like you do. I realize that stuff goes on out there that causes people to be late. The bridge goes up, and if it's the Ballard Bridge, sometimes it goes up and it doesn't go back down. And man, is there an interesting story about that from happened a couple of years ago. It's a little too graphic to tell here, this orientation, but uh, yeah, I'll kind of selectively I'll tell students about it. It was memorable and not in a good sort of way, I might add. But so stuff does go on out there. If somebody comes into a Zoom session 10 minutes late, I'm not going to make a big deal about it. The problem is when people come in 25 minutes late, and it's always the same people who want to do this. Okay. Now, getting back to what I was talking about the Department of Licensing, when you have a Zoom account, the type I have, it logs in when people join the session. Okay. And I have to show those records to the Department of Licensing auditors. And if they see that somebody is coming in consistently late, boy, out they go. All right. And then I got to like use every bit of personality and persuasion I've got to try to keep that from happening. Now, fortunately, my powers of personality and persuasion are pretty damn good. Okay. But they're not sometimes good enough. Okay. A lot of this depends upon who I'm dealing with at the Department of Licensing. So let's not give them a reason to do that. Okay. And, what I tell the students, look, you sleep in too much on Saturday morning. Okay. I can understand that. Just come on Sunday because hopefully you're still not going to be in bed at 4:15 in the afternoon, or just skip it that week and make it up in the next session. All right. Okay. They also got to stay the whole time. All right. All the way to the end. Yeah. So, and it's absolutely, and I'm going to cover this here shortly, but being late for the in-car drives is absolutely, totally 100% not allowed. Okay. There is no leeway there. All right. Ignoring my emails. When I send out communications to either students or parents, it is not just because I don't have anything else to do. I got plenty of other things to do. And it's not useless information that can wait. When I send out communications to the customers, it's important. Okay. And I expect people to open them, read them, and respond to them. Because I will get some people, I'll say, please confirm this new date. And all they got to do is, shoot me back a yes or a no. That doesn't take long. And then it'll go to the point where it's like the information is obsolete. Then it's like 3 weeks later, they'll get back to me, say, oh, sorry, I didn't get back to you earlier. So just kind of pretend that my emails are coming from a boss you want to work for or a customer you want to have, because they are actually important. All right. Okay, here's a couple frequent misconceptions. Students can take as long as they want to finish. They cannot. Now, we got the Zooms and we got the in-car. Let me talk about the Zooms first. The students must be done with the Zooms by the end of the winter session, which is going to be the weekend of May 4th or 5th or something like that. Okay, so there will be actually 4 opportunities to come to each Zoom. Okay, and I think one of those 4 they can do. All right. But that's very reasonable to get done in that time. The in-car drives, they need to be done during this session. I do not have the ability to put them into the next session, and I'm not supposed to do that anyway. And there again, when they see that I'm doing that, I got to very quickly think of some reasons why I'm doing that. And sometimes those reasons don't fly. So it gets back to committing to this and sticking with it. Okay. Another one is I'll do all the thinking. I won't. I will give as much help as I have to A, provide a good learning experience. I'm talking about in the car right now, by the way. And B, to keep everybody safe. My main priority is always to get everybody home safely in one piece. And I have never failed to do that. Okay. Now, here's an example of what I'm talking about. And this kind of stuff happens to me many, 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 many times every week, sometimes many times every day. This is an actual example and very representative. The street you're looking at is North 85th Street. in the upper right corner of your screen, that's where the Greenwood Fred Meyer is. That street actually is two lanes going each direction, even though I only have one direction shown here, but you'll get the drift. Okay, now just about 400 or 500 feet past the signal at Third, there is a big box truck with the four-way flashers on with the rear cargo door opened. Okay. The truck was obviously blocking the right lane. There's absolutely no mystery about that. So this was the guy's fifth lesson. Okay. So we're going along and I look ahead, I say, there's something up here that affects you. When you figure it out, do something about it. And he just keeps driving right up toward it. And I stop the car about 50 feet. Okay, we're heading up toward the back of the truck. First of all, I will tell you, had I not hit the brakes, something really bad would have happened. So there we are, about 50 feet in back of these guys loading that truck. Or actually, they were unloading the truck, okay, but that's not really that relevant. Those guys work fast. Man, whoever writes their paycheck is definitely getting the money's worth, aren't they? So, you know, now I could have just told the guy to change lanes, but I mean, okay, on the first drive, maybe even into the second drive, that's acceptable. On the fifth drive, it's not acceptable. I expect the student to have that figured out by then, because it's not really a very hard thing to figure out. Okay. And, I said, you got it figured out. And I'm holding the brake on my side, and he's like, saying something ridiculous. Okay. And then he says that, and yeah, you think. So I find it, I've taught different subjects. Okay. I've taught this subject more than any others, but I find that when I let students think through things and solve the issue on their own, they tend to learn better than if they get completely dependent on me. Because if they're completely dependent on me, they're not going to develop that sense of independent thinking that they're going to need. Okay. So I don't let people get really dependent on me. I'll give as much help as I need. I won't let anybody fall off a cliff, but there comes a time when I just say, figure it out. Okay. All right. Yeah. Congratulations, guy. So here's how it works. As the drives go along, I intentionally cut the assistants back. And inversely, I expect their ability to go up to solve their own problems. Okay. And by the fifth drive, you know what I do? They get in the car. I just say, drive somewhere. And then I just shut up. I just say, drive to the Space Needle, drive to Husky Stadium, drive to where you go to school, drive us to Chinatown. And I want to at least see them get the car headed in the right direction. Okay. Now, and I'm going to kind of get back to that later because there's another very important thing that I make a big deal about that other driving instructors don't. Okay, again, on the Zooms, be on time, do your best anyway. Okay, no leaving early. Requires a computer and a phone, which I'm sure everybody has now. Requirements for passing. Complete all 15 Zooms. I just made a big deal about that. Okay, this one here. All right, about 2 weeks, right around session 13th, I'm going to send the students a 48 question exam. Okay, this is the final exam for the class. I wrote this myself. It is not hard. It only takes about 30 minutes to complete. They do that, they fill it out, the little bubbles, put their name on it, and send it back to me, and that's it. Okay. This is a problem. Okay. Trying to get students to do this and turn it in. I mean, your parents, okay, think of what it's like to have your kid do something they don't want to do. This is like pulling teeth, all right? But again, they are required by the Department of Licensing, and I have to put these in the package and show it to them. So I need them to do this, but it's always like a nightmare chasing after about 1/3 of the group, trying to get them to do it. I gotta keep sending them texts and emails and threatening and everything. So, you know, be aware that I will send that to them a couple weeks before the end, and that they got to do it and get it in. And it's not hard, and it's not, I mean, hell, they can send it in and not even pass it, but they got to at least send it in. All right. And it doesn't take very much time. Now, that is not the actual knowledge test for the license. That's different, and it's done in my office, and I will cover that here shortly. Okay. Complete all 6 hours of driving. Okay. And be able to, when it says reasonably well, let's just say be able to drive at least not terribly by the last lesson. All right. They don't have to drive perfectly. That would be great, but it virtually never happens. Okay. This is what I was talking about. I put a lot of emphasis on knowing their way around. A lot of the students are what I would classify as extremely geographically challenged. Some of my students could not find their way out of a box if four sides of it were open. Okay. I have got students who are 16 years old and live in Magnolia and have no idea how to get to Queen Anne, and vice versa. I got students who have lived in Ballard for 16 years and could not find the Ballard Bridge to save their life. Because now I'm going to sound like a complete old fart here. Well, I am an old fart, so I guess I can sound like one. But, I mean, let's face it, a lot of my students for the last 15 years, their face has been stuck to that phone. And they got zero idea what anything is. Well, this is a big safety issue because when they get their licenses, they're going to be in the car by themselves. I'm obviously not going to be there. They can't have any friends in the car legally for the first 6 months. Uh, you're probably not going to be in the car with them. And there they are out driving. And if they have absolutely zero idea where they are and are completely, totally lost, that significantly cuts down on their ability to drive safely. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know what everybody's thinking. What is wrong with this old Luddite? Has he not heard of GPS? Yeah, I've heard of it, but can GPS have some advantages? Well, maybe this video will shed some light on that issue.
I'm your GPS. Turn right up ahead. You never update me, so now I just have to wing it. I meant turn left up ahead. Recalculating. Turn right now! And your 15-minute insurance may not pay for all this. So get Allstate. You can save money and be better protected from mayhem, like me. Recalculating.
Dollar for dollar, nobody protects you from mayhem like Allstate.
Great ad writer, terrible insurance. But yeah, so a few things about GPS. Number one, it requires looking at a screen. And here again, I'm just old fashioned, but I don't know. I always kind of thought when you're driving, you got to be looking out the window and not at a damn screen. And it can be inaccurate. Now, here's an actual story, and this happened 4 days ago. There was a guy, and this is in the summer class, and I got to tell you, I let way too many students into the summer class. I'm still trying to finish them right now. I cannot even remember the last time I had a day off. So, more iced tea here. Ah, the stuff I'm drinking now, it's not too bad. It doesn't really have any flavor, but I bought this stuff which no sugar, but it still was sweet, but it had like you drink it and like then 10 seconds later that aftertaste would like start kind of bubbling up out of oh God, it was just gross. So I'm not buying that stuff anymore. So this kid, I mean, he's one of the most geographically challenged people I've ever seen. Okay. He he lives in a house. I mean, the view is unreal. Okay. Looks right at the Space Needle. You know, it's like right there. And it just happened to be his last drive. I say, okay, drive us to the Space Needle. Says, says, where's the space? And I'm not kidding. He says, where's the Space Needle? And I'm like, oh boy. Um, yeah. Okay. So I said, look, I said, another hour, I'm not going to be here anymore to tell you how to do this stuff. You're going to be on your own. What are you going to do? He says, well, I'll just use Waze. So I said, okay, be my guest. Fire up your Waze app. All right. He says, okay. And I mean, I really should have recorded this whole thing. It was such a comedy of errors, you know. I mean, had he followed that Waze app where it was telling him to go, it would have taken us forever to get there, or he would have gotten in some huge collision. All right. Because it doesn't always show you the safest or even the fastest way to go. So, okay, tasks which are performed by intuitive knowledge coming right out of the brain are usually performed much faster and more accurately than tasks which are performed, you know, by outside instruction. That's a completely pretentious statement to make, but you get my drift, I think. Okay, so if I want the students to start noticing where stuff is, and they're gonna have to navigate themselves around this big city, so they might as well start by doing it now. So I do expect that. Come on, slide, advance. All right, requirements for getting a license, finish the program, this or any other. Now, most of you know this, but I'll go over it anyway. When you and I got our licenses, we went to a state office or a provincial office if it was in Canada, or possibly a national office if it was in Europe. We took a knowledge test and we took a drive test. That's very universal. In Washington and a few other states, that is no longer done by the state. It is done at private companies like mine. So the fee you are paying me, or the fee you're going to pay me, does include the testing. It's all inclusive. So when they're done with everything, and I have been paid the balance, I might add, you can make an appointment to come into my office in Lake City, and they can pass the 40-question knowledge test, which takes about 45 minutes on average. And then I will make their appointment for their drive test. Then they can pass that, take that, and pass that. They do not need to be 16 to take these tests. That is not necessary. They do, however, have to be done with the program, okay? Because I get a lot of students, they got classes to make up, and they want to come in and take the test right away. I have no idea why they want to do that, but then I have to say, no, you got to wait till you're done. Because there again, this is regulated, and I got to do everything in a certain sequence, or I start getting in trouble. And when I say getting in trouble, what I mean is $500 fines, or worse, like people getting disqualified or me losing my license to run the business, which has never had, that one has never happened. But the $500 fines have. Okay, then they come in and take the drive test and pass that. By the time they've been through 6 hours with me, there is no excuse for failing the drive test. None. The drive test is not difficult. Everything that's on the drive test, we will have done many, many times in the car. And not only that, the session 14 Zoom is a blow-by-blow review of the drive test and where people mess it up very commonly and how not to make those mess ups. All right. Okay. And have their permit for 6 months. By the way, on the drive test, they do not need to drive perfectly. Everybody worries way too much about parallel parking. Don't worry about it. 98% of everybody who comes in for the drive test totally blows parallel parking, yet most people still pass. Okay. Here's the criteria. They got to drive with me sitting next to them for about 15 to 20 minutes without doing anything dangerous. That's about it. Okay. But if I have to take control of the car physically or verbally, or somebody else has to slam the brakes on to keep from running into us, the test ends at that point. All right. That's the criteria. Can they drive safely? Got to hold their permits for 6 months and be 16, and then they can get their license. Okay, now the license testing is separate from the driver's ed program. Unlike the driver's ed program where there is a time limit, there is no time limit on testing. Okay, now the knowledge test, people can come in and take it anytime after the program and they can just do it and I won't charge. But I have a 1-year time limit on the drive test. I will still give people the drive test, but I charge a fee for it if they come in 1 year after the program start date, okay, which is very reasonable, I believe. And the fee is $80. And by the way, we use my car on the drive test, and it is at the Lake City office. It is not at your house. Okay, there is the first link on my very outdated, laughably outdated website is the testing link. You hit that and it will tell you exactly what to do to register for the testing. I leave nothing to doubt. I make everything ridiculously simple. Okay? Yeah, just as easy as possible. And so you do that, and I send back a confirmation which tells you everything you need to know, and just come in and do it. And again, it's as streamlined as I can possibly make it. Okay. Let's see. Is that correct? Yeah. Everybody's got to have their permit by the start of the program. Okay. Now, question, is this required by the state? No, it's required by me. And here's why. Because I got a little bit lax. I wasn't getting on people's case hard enough about getting their permits. I got so busy during the summer that, I mean, to the point of, for the last 3 months, I've been working so much. Most of the time, I have no idea what day of the week it is. Okay. Alls I do is run out the door and give lessons 7 days a week. It's been just insane. So I kind of let things slip a little bit on the administrative side. And there was a student whose drives didn't start till right at the end of the program. Okay. And then I show up for the first drive. I say, okay, I need to see your permit. She says, I don't have a permit. I mean, what? And I said, you were supposed to have that 8 weeks ago. Okay. And came up with some flimsy excuse why not, why she didn't have it. So I said, I cannot give you the lesson without a permit. Go back in the house, go online and get one, and make sure you have it by the next time I show up without fail. Okay. Well, she had waited so long to get it that she couldn't get it. And then, like about 4 hours later, I get this email from a Department of Licensing auditor that says, why are you having a student get the permit after the program ends? And this puts me in a very awkward position. And I'm not going to get put in that position again. All right. Getting the permit is so easy. Okay. Don't even have to go in. You can get it on. It takes like 5 minutes. Just follow the instructions. But That's going to be the deadline. I get it. There's only a few people who still don't have their permits, but do it. Okay. There again, I have to be a little bit of a hard case here, or else people will just not do the stuff they got to do. Okay. If they get it online, you print out a temporary, print out multiple copies of that. Now, permits are kept with the student, not with you, not in your car, with them. Just like we have to have our driver's licenses physically with us, they have to have their permits physically with them. And a picture of it is not a legal substitute. In this state, now I wish this wasn't the case, but in this state, the student has to have a driver's license or a permit. The vehicle has to have an actual copy of the insurance and the registration. Copies on a phone are not yet a legal substitute. I wish they were. They are not. Okay. This is where permits get kept, in the phone case, because we know they're not going to lose that thing now, are they? Okay. That's where they are kept. And again, they have to have it with them when they drive, with me or with you, period. In car lesson schedules, you all have these. Okay, and I scheduled all the students according to your parameters. And for some people, doing this was no small task, I will tell you. Okay, now the in-car lessons, by default, they begin and end at your house unless otherwise indicated. And whenever I am picking students up at other locations, which I occasionally do, I will send them a Google Earth view with a big red circle exactly where we will be waiting. I tend to do things, you never know what to look at me, but I tend to do things very, very precisely. Okay, they must be stuck with. I already made a big deal about that. The students must be on time. We show up, I expect them to be there, and they must have their permits. Now, here's how this works. Let's say your student has a lesson scheduled at 1 p.m. Well, the 12 o'clock student was driving. The 12 p.m. student gets in the back seat. Your student gets in behind the wheel. First thing they do is drive the 12 o'clock student home or someplace else. Then they get out. And then at 2 o'clock, we land at the next place. And your student gets in the back seat and this 2 p.m. student drives them home. And this whole system works really, really well. Everybody gets an hour of driving and they don't have to go anywhere. You do not have to drive them to somebody else's office and sit there and kill time for over an hour. You don't have to pay for Uber or Lyft to get them there and back. Okay. So it's just ridiculously convenient. They just come out of the door and there we are. Okay. And this works really, really well as long as people cooperate with me. But when people don't cooperate with me, it very quickly screws things up really big time. Okay. Now, if I was giving drives from the office like everybody else does, because I'm the only one that does this, being a little bit late would not be a critical issue. But here it is a critical issue because a lot of the students, I mean, they're a long way away from each other. And I got 2 people on the east side, got somebody else out in Snohomish County. And I mean, I can make this work, but it takes a lot of planning on my part to make it work. Okay, so when we show up, I expect them to be there. This one went a little too long. Okay, now if the drive is at 2 p.m., you can almost bet $10,000 that we are going to roll up right at 2. I stay on schedule with a degree of accuracy which is downright weird. Okay. Because I plan this schedule meticulously. And so at 2 o'clock, that doesn't mean they're going to kind of start thinking about coming out the door then. If they only coming out there at 2, they're late. Let's share reality being what it is. We might be there as early as 1:50 or as late as 2:10, but it's usually going to be right on the nose, more iced tea. I always kind of got to explain that gurgling noise there. Okay, so at least 5 minutes before I want them out there, standing right there at the curb where anybody can see them. Okay, when we show up now, I do not come to the door to get people. I tell my students, if you want somebody to come to the door, order a pizza, okay? Because I'm not going to do it. This is like being picked up by Uber or Lyft. The Uber driver does not get out and look for people. They don't come to the door to try to find people. They expect the passenger to come out, see the Prius with the blacked out windows, and get in the Prius with the blacked out windows, okay? Yeah, so it is the passenger's responsibility to do that. And here it is the student's responsibility. Okay, so now if we roll up and they're not there, the first thing I'm going to do is reach over and blow the horn. And then I'll probably text them. And then I'll wait maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and then we are gone. Okay. And then I have to rebook them in the future, and I charge $90 for that, which I don't like doing, but I have to. Because then my time is ridiculously valuable, because when I got to book students into the next session, that's less students I can take in the next session. All right. And these in-car drive slots are like gold to me. Okay. So 2 o'clock means 2 o'clock, or it actually means about 1:55. Okay, a few other points. They drive for an hour, but you got to plan on as much as 90 minutes in the car, depending upon where the next student lives. The only drive that actually goes 60 minutes is the last drive of the day, which would be 3 o'clock on Saturday, 2 o'clock on Sunday, or 8 p.m. on weeknights. Okay. Okay, now I can pick them up and drop them off at other places as long as I know about it in advance and as long as it's doable. Sometimes parents will want me to pick up their kid at soccer practice in Tukwila at 6 p.m. on a weeknight. And that just doesn't work, okay? Because it just can't, it's not possible. I'll do the best I can, though. Okay. The lessons are intense. 1 hour with me is like about 3 hours with anybody else. Unlike a few other programs, we do not drive around a parking lot at 3 miles an hour. Hopefully, everybody watched the video that I sent you, that 17-minute video. And like I said in the intro to that, if you actually go through that process, or at least part of that process, it's going to make this whole process much more effective, safe, and less stressful, and all around more productive. Okay. So wherever the last student lived that we got to get home, that's where your kid is going to drive to. And even if they've never driven more than 3 miles an hour in the parking lot, that may involve jumping right onto the freeway. And I'm just going to tell you right now, that's just the way it is. Okay. But don't worry, I haven't lost anybody yet. Okay, now again, when students make mistakes in the car and there's nothing they're going to do, which is going to shock me. Now, in the first session of the actual driver's ed, I tell a lot of stories about what I've been through. Okay. Now, I find that parents tend not to enjoy these stories as much as teenagers do, but these are holy God, you got to be kidding me. Well, when you do what I do, very often the truth is stranger than fiction is, okay? And I've been through some stuff that you would not believe, but these stories do make a point, all right? And one of the points is that, hey, I've been through all this. There's nothing you're going to do that's going to shock me, which is true, you know? And so when they make mistakes, I'm used to it. And I say, well, that's not the correct way of doing it. Yeah, here's the correct way of doing it. And I also say, here's why it's the correct way of doing it. And I give a very logical, fact-based explanation of it. No authority complex, none of this BS by saying, because I say so. I could get into some political stuff here, but I told myself I wouldn't. Okay, but I'm really good at making political analogies, but I won't do that here. But man, could I? So, yeah. But when I do that, I don't want them arguing about it. Now, one of the more common ones, and again, this happened last week. We were going down Fifth Avenue, which goes southbound under the monorail tracks. You all know what I'm talking about. We're in the center. There's 2 lanes on the left, 1 lane on the right. Okay. And lights red, and the student isn't stopping. So rather than say stop, what I will do is I will wait to the last second, and then I will just slam the brake on. And then I will just simply point to the light and I say, the light is red, okay? Just to make the point. And then he says, I hate when people do this. I was going to stop. I said, yeah, you were going to stop after we got in a big, massive collision, after which we would probably being both loaded into the back of ambulances or worse. Okay. Look, that shit doesn't fly with me. All right. We can debate many things. There's absolutely no debate what a red light means. Okay. It means stop and it means nothing else. All right. Okay. The freeway. Now, I don't always get in as much freeway driving as I would like to do on lessons. And it's not because I don't want to do it. It's actually the easiest part of this whole thing. It really is. Here's what happens sometimes. First of all, a lot of students live a long way from the freeway. If you live in Magnolia, nice place, but Magnolia is kind of a long way from everything. And then sometimes we'll get there to the freeway and it's like moving 3 miles an hour. So what's the point? So I will generally have the students jump onto the freeway whenever the opportunity presents itself. Okay. I do the best I can, but please don't get too mad at me if we don't get as much freeway driving in as you may like. Okay. Because the circumstances just don't always allow it. Now, keep in mind that all the stuff I'm telling you, I'm definitely not being like in a car like that guy or that guy. And there was one other slide with some other guy, but I took it off. You can probably guess who I'm talking about. Okay, now you've all heard of the 1%, like Bernie Sanders talks about. Let me talk about the 8%. After doing this for over 30 years and tens of thousands of lessons, I can very reliably say that there's about 8% of everybody out there in society that just cannot do this. And on average, there are 2 in every group. Now, let me show you some stuff these people do, or more accurately, don't do. Here's a perfect example of it. This is Queen Anne Avenue going southbound. On the right is Menchie's, and we are about 100 feet from that stop sign with the 4-way stop. And we've got these people levitating across the street. Kind of looks like the Abbey Road album cover with one less person. Now, if I were to ask you, and this is a rhetorical question because, it's a dumb question. I'm not actually asking you this, but if I were to ask you, what should you do in this situation? The answer is just bloody obvious, as they might say in the UK. Start stepping on the brake and stop the car when the front of the car is at the first line. It's obvious. But people in this 8%, that's not always what they do. They will just keep right on driving. And if I didn't take control of the car, there would be a real mess there. So I stopped the car, you know? Now, can the driver clearly see that there are pedestrians and a stop sign there? Yeah. There's nothing obstructing the view of the pedestrians or the stop sign. They can see them. And if they can't see them, I don't think they ought to be driving, quite frankly. Or they need some very powerful corrective lenses. Okay. Do they know that they should stop the car? Well, I would certainly hope they know that. So let's say they can clearly see the situation and they know they should stop. So why don't they? Because there is a mental disconnect between what they see and what they need to do and the action which needs to be taken. Now, I don't know. I don't know if any of you are forensic psychologists, or I'm sure some of you are doctors, because seems about half my students' parents are doctors. But there's probably a more medically proper term for this, but I call this process delay. They see what they need to do, yet they don't do it because there is this disconnect again between what they see and what they need to do. It's either a total disconnect or there is a connection, but the connection runs so slow, it might as well not be there. Okay. Here's another example. Curves. Now here, obviously the driver of the red car turns the wheel and successfully negotiates the curve. But people in this 8%, here's what very often happens. They'll go along, the road curves, but they don't. And if I didn't grab the wheel really quick and shove it to the left, we would run right off the road. Now, many, many thousands of times, I've tried to figure out what's going on here with these people. So I say, did you see that the road curved? Yeah. Do you know that you should turn the wheel and do something about it? Yeah. And I'll say, why didn't you do it? And the answer is almost always the same. The answer is, they say, I don't know. Now, a question comes up, can people in this category ever learn to drive? Yes, but they are what I call rote learners. It takes many, 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 many hours of practice and many, many, many hours of telling them exactly what to do. And a lot of these people can function adequately, at least at a minimal level, as long as I am telling them absolutely everything, directing their every move. But I'm not always going to be there to do that, okay? And I've got 2 3-word phrases if your kid fits into this category. Phrase number 1, don't blame me. Phrase number 2, God help you. All right, now one reason about that I know, this is an issue beyond my control when people are like this. Okay, I cannot get in and rearrange the DNA. Man, would that be great to be able to do that? But one reason I know this is twins, because I've experimented with this. Mainly not so much fraternal twins, but identical twins. Okay. And I can take identical twin out. Let's call them identical twin A. And then I'll take twin B out. And I'll take them on the same route. And it's uncanny because if they make mistakes, it'll be the exact same mistake at the exact same place. Like I said, it's absolutely unbelievable. So if I have twin A and twin A drives just fine, I'm not going to worry about twin B. But if twin A is a train wreck, I know I've got my work cut out for. I remember many years ago, like 16 years ago, I had that's not them, by the way, but I had these identical triplets. They lived in Magnolia on Viewmont. And I used to do one right after the other, and oh, they were all just terrible, and that was one very long, stressful 3 hours, I will tell you. Okay. If your kid is in this grouping, I will promise I will do my best. Okay. But I cannot perform miracles. I have some miracle iced tea here. Except it's not really how can anything you buy at Safeway be a miracle? Graduated license, I'm required to give this information. There will be a link to that information in the agreement I send you. I'm not going to go over it now, okay? But you can read it yourself. But, I'm required to give it to you. So, hey, I did. Practice driving. I'm really big on this. This is what you got to do. All right. Now, I want you to remember that experience reduces collisions. That is like a statement which just, it's almost indisputable. Now, let's say somebody comes into my office with 0 hours of experience. And when I say zero, I don't mean literally zero. Let's say, now I got to tell you that about half the testing I do at my office are not my students. They're members of the general public. After I leave here, I'm going out to my office in Lake City, and I've got some drive tests booked today, and none of them are my own students. Some of them are teenagers, some of them are adults. And so let's say that somebody only had 6 hours in driver's ed. And then, they come in and take the test. Well, it's possible they might get lucky and pass. Okay. And, but as the number of pre-license experience hours go up, the collision probability after being licensed goes down. And that's very, very reliable. Okay. Now, yesterday, guy came in. He was a teenager, but he did not take driver's ed at my place. We start the test. He fails the test within the first minute, which a lot of people do. So I pulled the car over, and I said, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is you failed the test. The good news is I'm going to be a nice guy. We're going to restart the test right now, and I'm not even going to charge you anything. How about that? And I gave him an explanation of what he did wrong. Okay. And I said, don't do that again. So he manages to pass the second time. But he kind of got lucky in that, he was making some turns and there was nobody there. But if there had been somebody coming, I don't know if he would have done it right. So we get back, and at the end, I say, look, you did pass the test because you technically did not do anything to fail. However, and I said, before you get out of the car, you're going to listen to me for about 5 minutes. And I went over some stuff that I saw him doing wrong that, could be a problem. So just because somebody passes the drive test does not mean they're a good driver. All right. Okay. Now, I can tell you, oh, you're going to love driving with your kid like these people. Look at that. It's like the heart's coming up. They're going out driving. They don't have seatbelts on. It's just it's just a love affair. I can tell you that, and that, or here he is driving. The kid looks like a Zach. And what's Zach's response to that? That kid is so full of himself. Okay. And then I could tell you that, then you could hook me up to a lie detector, technically called a polygraph machine. And I'd be lying to you so much, the damn machine would actually burn up, Look, if you're at all normal, which I'm assuming you are, driving with your kid can be stressful. All right. It can it is. Now, it's stuff that is going to drive you crazy or drive you right to the edge of having a subdermal hematoma. It doesn't bother me. Why? Well, number one, I got a brake on my side of the car. Okay. One of my cars, I have two instructions cars. One of them has a brake and an accelerator. And I can drive the car just fine from the right side. And, I know what's going to happen 3 seconds before it does happen. And I can react so quickly. It's like downright bizarre. So I don't even worry about it. So here I'm going to tell you some stuff to do, which is going to make it easier and safer for you when you're driving with them. And a lot of that begins with those exercises that were in that video that I already sent you. Okay. Now, so let's say there you are. And I'm sure none of you actually look like that, by the way. If you do, God, I thought I had it bad. Okay, well, Zach is driving, you're a little bit worried, but you're not like panicking. And then good old Zach is heading toward a red light with a whole lot of pedestrians in the crosswalk. And he's not stopping. And then you have gone from that to this. By the way, that is panicking. Then you're yelling, you want me to tell us what to do? Well, I'll do the best I can. Okay. I wouldn't say it's no problem, but let me give you a few ideas how to handle these situations. Now, again, when that kind of thing happens to me, or I was telling you about the kid the other day under the monorail tracks. Well, yeah, I mean, I got a brake on the right side of the car. I can stop the car. You don't have that. You always want, as much as possible, to use a vehicle that has that setup with the shifter in between the seats and access to the parking brake in between the seats. It's a big disadvantage to have the type where it's one of those pedals. The parking brake is one of those pedals off to the left. That does you no good whatsoever. Okay, now let's say that, first of all, you always want to make sure that the parking brake is tight enough to lock the rear wheels. And if it's not, it's a pretty minor repair to get that done. Okay, so let's say that you have to stop the car. All right. Okay. And you pull the parking brake on, which I will tell you that newer type where it's the switch like that, which is that thing is either on or off. It's not like one of the older ones where you can ease it on. Once you pull that, it's going to lock the rear brakes. Will that stop the car if the driver's on the gas pedal? It will not. The biggest difference between the foot brake and the parking brake is this. The parking brake only works on the back brakes. Most of the braking is done on the front brakes. So you pull that, it'll slow the car down. It won't necessarily stop it. There's a way you can instantly make that about 5 times as effective. And I do, every time I use my brake on my side of the car, I do this. What I do is I knock the shifter 1 click forward into neutral. The engine revs up, but that cuts the power to the drive wheels. So that brake is no longer fighting the engine, and the car will be able to stop in a shorter distance, okay? There is a device called the controller. And as you can see, the full name is the Controller Passenger Safety Brake. It's about $100 on Amazon. You can see how it works. One end of it hooks to the brake stem, and the other one goes off over, okay, to the passenger. Does this work? Yes. Okay. How do I know? Because I bought one. I bought one and I put it in just to experiment so I could tell people what it's like. It does work. However, it is nowhere near as good as having a brake on my side of the car like I have in my cars. And by the way, in case you're wondering how you get a car, buy a car with cars with brakes on the right side, you don't. I have to put those in myself. And it is an absolutely horrible job to do. Fortunately, my mechanical engineering skills are pretty good, but you got to be extremely inventive to put those in. But, in one of my cars now that I've got, it was the hardest when I ever put it in. This is very simple to hook up. And unlike the video, which demonstrates it, it shows the driver, shows the passenger operating with one hand. You cannot operate it with one hand. It takes both arms to do it, okay? And you got to put quite a bit of force on it. That's one of the devices. The other device is called a wing brake. They're about the same price. I've never used the wing brake, but I would imagine that the controller would work better than the wing brake. The wing brake, you would have to have a quite strong left arm to make that thing work, I would think. Okay. Okay, now, by the way, we're probably going to end about 1. I apologize, but I'm rambling a little bit too much today. And rambling takes up time. So just please stick with me to the end. I would appreciate it. Okay, now, unlike a lot of other places, by the time the students get in the car with me, we're going right out in the real world. And I need them to be at a kind of a certain level. All right. I want them to be able to turn and recover the steering. What do I mean by that? I mean just that. Start the turn at the correct time and recover the steering back to straight. And in that video, that is explained. Maintain a straight path. You're thinking, how could anybody not drive straight? Some of you would be surprised. Get it up to 15 or 20 and stop. I don't care if they jerk the car. All right, but stop and go without affecting the steering. And stop and go enough so they can intuitively, consistently, and reliably distinguish the gas and the brake. Getting those mixed up, especially with you, not so much with me, can be very dangerous. So, I want that to be automatic. I do not want them getting in my car on the first drive, looking down and asking me which pedal does what, because I'm going to say you should know that by now. If you're in a parking lot with them, as was illustrated in the video, and you notice they're having directional control issues, means they just can't seem to steer the damn thing. There's an app, the full name is called Fast Lane Street Racing. It's actually a very sophisticated app. It's a racing game. It's got gas and brake, and you can steer it, obviously. Now, I tell my students that play with this, I say, don't worry about racing the other cars. Ignore the other cars. Let them hit you. I say, just get the car around the race course once without going off the course. After you've managed to do that one time, keep doing it. And every time you do it, speed your car up. This is actually much more challenging than actually driving. This is like driving at 100 miles an hour on wet glare ice when you're 3 times the legal alcohol limit, which I would imagine would be one hell of a challenge. So I do find that students that are having directional control issues, if they get this app and they actually do play with it, I do notice improvement. Here's the problem. Most students who can't drive very well never played video games. And they just are reluctant to do so, even though this isn't really a traditional video game. But I find that kids that play video games or they grew up riding skateboards, skiing, stuff like that, they do tend to pick this up quite well, very naturally. What is this? This is a movie I watched the other night. I've watched this movie probably 25 times. This is a movie. It's called The Paper Chase. It's about first-year law students at the Harvard Law School. And if you've ever been to law school, you will love this, okay? Even if you haven't, it's a great movie. And the guy on top with the bow tie, played by an actor named John Houseman, that's Professor Kingsfield. This story will make sense here as I go through it. The movie begins with the students coming in to the class on the first day. And after most of them are in there, this guy comes out of the door, the side door, walks up to the podium, slams a book down, and just stares at them. And if you're at all human, you damn near mess yourself in the pants just by looking at this guy. Okay. Now, I am nothing like him, nothing whatsoever. Okay. So I'm not making a comparison between me and him. Here's the thing. He expected those students to know the material that he was going to discuss in that lecture before they ever walked in the door. And that was posted. You know, they knew what they were supposed to do, yet very few of them were prepared. And a lot of them were extremely uncomfortable when he started questioning them. So here's the comparison with this. Even though I'm nothing like Professor Kingsfield, I expect the students to be at that certain level by the time they get in the car with me. Do not cancel the first drive if they're not. But, you know, because we are going right out in the real world, I expect them to, you know, be able to steer the car and to know the gas and the brake and to follow my instructions. Okay. You don't have to be anywhere near perfect, but I need them to be able to do that very, very basic stuff. Because if I'm just driving the car from the right side, you know, which I can do, it's just not productive. Okay. So you're going to have to spend some time with them. And is it going to be stressful? Yeah. Is it going to be boring? Yeah. Is it going to be stressful and boring? Yeah. What a combination. But there again, it comes with everybody doing what they got to do, which I went through about 90 minutes ago. When you're driving with them, there's some stuff you definitely want to avoid. Okay. You got to be careful with this. Many of you are going to be absolutely shocked, even if your kid can drive forward really good. They're going to put it in reverse and they're going to be, they're not going to be good. Going forward is one thing, but when they put it in reverse, it's not intuitive in many cases, and you're going to be amazed by this. And don't try to like teach them how to parallel park on the first drive. And you can if you want to, but I generally cover the stuff on the third drive, and I will teach them a way to do it, which is like very reliably great. You got to be very careful about this unprotected left turns. By the way, what that is, that's when you make a left turn without a green arrow to hold the oncoming traffic. And I'm going to have some graphics to illustrate all this stuff here very shortly. Complex lane changes. One of the things that students very reliably suck at is lane changes. Again, more about that very quickly here. And multiple entrances to traffic. Let's cover the backing up first. Let's say that you live in this house way up there and you got your own private forest and you got to back all the way down through your private forest to the street. Although, if you have a house with a private forest, I would imagine you have a place to turn around. But let's just say you don't. Well, you've done this thousands of times and there's never been a problem with it. So, you know, you've been out driving with your good old boy Randy, and he did just fine, you know. So they say, okay, Randy, my boy, back on down to the street. And you're just sitting there, yeah, Randy can do anything. And you're thinking that's going to happen. That's my boy. But it's more likely going to be this. Randy in reverse, and he just knocked over one of those $35,000 bonsai trees that the guy comes 3 times a year to prunes. And you have gone from a happy camper to a very unhappy camper very quickly. All right. So just be aware, even if your student is pretty good driving the car forward, they're going to put it in reverse and they're very likely not going to be good. Okay. Unprotected left turn. That is the most potentially dangerous situation you can be in with your kid. Now, the blue car, which is approaching your car, is not going to stop. The driver can see the blue car, but because you are sitting 3 feet to the right and the angle at which you are looking at it, you either can't see it at all or you can't see it as well. And if your kid turns in that front of that oncoming car and you get hit, guess who's going to get hit? It's going to be you sitting on the right side of the car. This is generally the theme of drive number 2. We pull the car over. I get out a red notebook with graphics. I show the graphics. I explain the process, and then we repeat the process over and over and over again. Okay? Just be aware that this is potentially very dangerous. So how do you avoid this situation? It's actually quite easy. Just avoid it. Don't do it. Go down to where there is a protected left turn or a four-way stop. It may be a few blocks out of your way, but okay, so be it. All right, don't do stuff like this. I don't even do stuff like this. Not only is that potentially dangerous, it's generally not even any faster because you could be sitting there till 3 Thanksgivings from now waiting for a big enough break in the traffic. As much as possible, you don't want them crossing 2 directions of traffic. So keep things simple in the beginning. Again, you want to go down to where there's a 4-way stop or there is a traffic signal with a protected left. Okay, this is not only a mistake amongst inexperienced drivers, this is huge amongst all drivers. And I watch for people doing this wrong when we're out. And when I can see people entering traffic onto our street and they're not doing this, I'm paying extra attention to them. Those 2 silver cars are parked, and they're completely blocking the view of the lane which is moving. The parked cars are not what the driver of the yellow car needs to see. The parked cars are not going to hit the driver of the yellow car. The driver of the yellow car has to get out to where they can see the moving cars. They have to get out and see what is relevant. So what some people will do is they will come straight out. The error in doing this is by the time they're out far enough to see, they're already out there, and it can be too late. The solution to this issue is ridiculously simple, yet many people don't use it. Gee, what a surprise. What you want to do, and what you ever want to have your kid do, is angle the car very, 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 very sharp to the right, almost as if they're pulling to the curb. Come out, and they will be able to see that lane without actually being out in it. And when you think about this from a principle of geometry, it makes perfect sense. Okay, here I am coming up to the stop sign. The first stop is for pedestrians. Cannot see anything to the left, nothing. So I got to get where I can see. So right at this point, I'm angling the car sharp to the right toward the parking lane. A lot of people would just hit the gas and go there. Bad idea. Now, you notice I come out, and at this point I can see. But now it can be better than this. Now watch what happens here. I angle the car about 10 more degrees to the right. I'm about another 1 foot. Now watch what happens between this point and there. By coming out another foot, I've pretty much quadrupled my range of visibility to the left. So again, think scientifically here. It's an easy problem to get around if you do it right. Like that. Okay, lane changes. Okay, now, the biggest mistake that new drivers make on lane changes is they are too timid. They want to slow the car down, or they'll like slam the brakes on. So mistake number 1, we need to be in the left lane. We are in the yellow car. They slow way down. And if there's a whole line of cars there, that we can never get the car over there. Or number 2, they don't either speed up or slow down. They just keep going the same speed. And again, there's no place to get over there. Now, generally speaking, what I tell students to do is to accelerate in front of the cars. And frequently they're afraid to do this. But I tell them with me sitting there, don't worry about it. I'm not going to let anything happen. But, I say, hey, that gas pedal is there for a reason. Use it. There are times when you ease back and get in back, but you got to like analyze the situation. What this means to you is that if you know you're going to have your student turn right or left at a traffic signal somewhere, and I realize I'm going on too long, but please bear with me. I'd appreciate it because hang with me a little longer. It'll be worth it. But get them in the correct lane a lot sooner than you think you should. You got to plan these things way ahead. Those cars are parked. This is a standard width Seattle residential street. The proper place to drive on these streets is perfectly centered right down the middle. Because you can only get one car at a time through anyway. Here's what a lot of new drivers will do. They will hug the right. You are going to find that a lot of times your kid, if you didn't tell them to do so, they would be constantly running off the road to the right because they're not used to sitting on the left side of the car. Here's a big reason why. Their vision is locked directly in front of the car, and they are not intuitively aware of the right surface of the vehicle until they hit something. Avoid personal issues, any issue. I know that's tempting. I know it is, but don't do it. If the issue with your kid is that big outside of the car, behind the wheel, it's going to get that big and bigger. It just has a way of magnifying problems like you wouldn't believe. So just leave all that personal stuff at the curb. Okay. Some stuff you should do. Give very clear directions well in advance. Make your directions unmistakable. And if you want them to turn somewhere, don't tell them when they're halfway through the intersection already. Tell them well in advance and make sure you get them in the correct lane for the turn. That's a very common problem because they don't get in the correct lane for turns. Don't say the word right unless you mean the direction right. Now, here's a really big cause of drive test failure. On the drive test, and I think I got a slide about this in a minute here. You can tell them to turn right or left at the signal, and there will be a very, very obviously marked right or left turn lane, yet they don't get into the lane. And it's weird, unless you tell them to get into that lane, half the time they will not get into that lane. Look further ahead than you normally would. Look further to the sides than you normally would. Narrate. Plan the routes more for safety than the way you always went. By the way you always went might not always be the best way anyway. Maybe it is, I don't know. Got to keep in mind that about 1/3 of all students have zero concept of right from left. And when students are getting those mixed up, when I say turn right or turn left, I want you to take half a second to think which hand you write with. That is helpful. I'm not really big on speed. I just say move with the traffic flow. And if that's not the speed limit, I'm not really concerned about it. Not in Seattle anyway. We go to Medina or stuff, I'm concerned about it. But Seattle, I'm usually not even looking at the speedometer, but I am big on following distance. Okay. I'd say always have enough distance in front of you. So if the vehicle in front just suddenly stops, there is zero doubt you could stop before running into them. The legal minimum is 2 seconds. That is way too close. With me, we're doing 4 to 6 seconds. With you, it should be 5 to 7, I would say. You want maybe a little more following distance that way because it's going to take them longer to react to what's going on in front. So if you have that bit of extra following distance, it's really helpful. And I tell my students, following distance is much more critical than speed is. Keep in mind, turns are a process, not an event. And the first part of that process is always getting into the correct lane. This is the corner of Lake City Way and Northeast 115th Street. On one of the drive test routes, We go up there and we turn right at that signal. We are already in that right lane, not the bus lane, not the right turn lane. I tell the person being tested, I say, go up and turn right at the traffic signal by the Shell station. I expect them to be able to figure out that they need to be in the right lane. So they make the turn from the wrong lane, and I pull the car over, and that's when I say, sorry, that's disqualifying. That's a violation. And then I show them this picture, okay? And then I also have to tell them that it's perfectly okay to cross the solid white line and drive a little bit in the bus lane, okay? I mean, you don't drive in it for 3 blocks, but a couple hundred feet early, no problem at all. Okay, just go ahead and do it. No big deal. Okay, and when I used to have the place in Fremont, I used to give the test in Ballard. That's the corner of Northeast 58th and 8th. And tons of people would fail the test there at that light because they did not get into the turn lane because they were afraid to cross the solid yellow line. Okay, here is the biggest cause of collisions amongst inexperienced drivers. It is tunnel vision. We're driving on that street. That's what we would see more than that, okay? But the brand new driver, the one that's just getting behind the wheel, they're not seeing that many cases. They're seeing that. It's like they're looking through a tube. So, and they are missing the stop sign. So what you'll need to do, or what I do, is just simply say, stop sign up ahead. And that will call their attention to it. But just be aware that the range of visibility when they first start driving is going to be very, very, very constricted. It's like they're staring at a spot 50 feet right in front of the car and missing everything else. Now, that field of visibility very quickly expands out as they gain experience, but in the beginning, it is very narrow. Here's something Magnolia residents or people that go to Magnolia. Here's something I've never, ever been able to figure out. That's the corner of West Blaine Street and 28th Avenue West, northbound. There is a stop sign there. The stop sign is right out in the open. And over decades, I've never been able to figure out why this is. Even students who drive really, really well, half of them would blow right through that stop sign if I didn't tell them about it or if I didn't hit the brakes. They would stop at every other stop sign in the whole universe, except that one. And I have no idea why, but just be aware of it. Okay, I think I'm nearing the end here. You're thinking, thank God. Oh, here comes the dark topic. All right, now, most driving instructors in this state do not go out with students in the car one-on-one. Okay? But with me, the students are in the car one-on-one. And a lot of the other topics, programs that have a policy of always having at least 2 students in the car think people like us are crazy for doing this. Why is that? Well, you can understand here. Here we've got adult male, myself, in car with 15-year-old female. Okay. Can you understand how possibly some misunderstandings could come up? Well, I got to tell you that I have never been accused of doing anything inappropriate. The main reason is I don't do anything inappropriate, and I'm extremely careful not to. This stuff, I never touch students, not unless it's inadvertent when I'm grabbing the steering wheel. I never talk about boyfriends or girlfriends or stuff like that. I never comment on personal appearance, no matter how weird it might be. I just keep it really businesslike, all right? But there's always a fear that somebody's going to say something that happened that in fact didn't. So I would tell you, if your kid is the type that maybe has some kind of mental issue or is a pathological liar, that is going to say something happened that didn't, let's just part company right now, okay? And generally speaking, I tell people this, I say, I would rather have no relationship at all than a bad relationship. So anything I have said here today that you're really bothered by, um, you can withdraw if you want, if you're uncomfortable with me. I don't really see any reason why anybody would be, but you said not everybody gets my sense of humor. Well, that's about it. I do appreciate you coming. Oh, one other thing. I'm not done. I need your help about this, okay? Um, what I do is hard. And in many cases, it is extremely hard. And depending upon the situations I'm dealing with. And I really don't need people getting on my case about little minor things. And this is a bit of an outdated term, but you remember the term Karens. Or what's the male equivalent of a Karen? Chad? Okay, let's say Chad, even though I don't know if that's like accurate, but look. Uh, I may mess up a little bit on the schedule. I generally do things right, but mistakes do happen. And when I do, if it happens, please don't get all over my case about it. Don't send me an email just to make me eat crow that says, look, see, you sent me this. You said, see, look at this. You said 2 o'clock. I don't want it. All right. Please just be a little bit understanding if I do something that maybe you don't find perfect. Because I don't want this to be back in the bad old days when I worked for other people, like this place in Redmond, where this guy actually physically assaulted me in a parking lot because I was like 15 minutes late for his kid's drive. In case you're wondering, trust me, he found out very quickly that that was an extremely bad idea to do that as he's laying on the asphalt. Okay, now, so thank you very much for coming. I'm sorry I took so long. Hopefully, you got something out of it. The actual program is done. If you've got any questions or concerns, unmute yourself and let me know. Other than that, everybody else, have a good remainder of the weekend. I'm here for you now.